My name is Leisha O'Connor and this is my portfolio submission piece for NCAD. My theme was my movement and I started off by exploring my very own movement. I was a ballet dancer myself and I started off with two observational pieces of my most prized possession, my pointe shoes. The very first drawing of this project was the tonal one at the top, and this shoe belonged to Joanna Banks, who I admire so much. And then next I moved on to my very own shoe and I did an acrylic painting. For the next page I did a white tonal at the top and I began experimenting with styles and different mediums. And so I did a continuous charcoal line drawing, a wire drawing of it, and then I did a tracing of it using hot glue. And beside that, I did a hot glue tonal line drawing, and this one was a version of Joanna Banks' shoes, and then I painted over the hot glue, which gave a mysterious kind of effect. Here, I wanted to experiment with different ways to produce different textures with the glue gun. I saw how applying the gun directly on the paper kind of gives a more definite finish, but then separating gives a more flowy, free finish. And for the golden piece, I wanted a more blocky, zigzaggy shape, and you can see me testing beside it. This one is my favorite. You can then I tried various ways of spreading the glue. One was the paintbrush. I don't recommend it. It burnt, it melted the bristles. Next, the cutter, and I did a couple more tests here and there. Then I noticed how hot glue appears kind of whiter the more layers you add to it, so I did lots of layers of white for the more tonal parts. And then I was inspired by my previous tonal white painting. And I moved on to photography for the next page, and here I wanted to capture like the really perfect lighting, the shine and the golden. I did a gouache study below. These pages for me represent reality. Many label ballet as perfect, but I wanted to show the difference between the outside and inside view, hence the whole. The whole gives a little insight to the reality inside, and for me expresses breaking free from the label. So then I did more photos, and I cut open one of my old shoes to expose the toes, and when I was doing my photo shoot it felt really like raw and exposing because it was showing what lay behind the gorgeous silk of the pointe shoes. And then soon enough I kind of realised that that's not the point, and then it's not a shameful piece but an empowering one. And yes, the next one here is one of my final pieces. I was working with hot glue again, so here it's actually a relief. And so the entire foot is hot glue, but I just painted acrylic paint on top of it to hide the hot glue. And then the ribbons, the elastic drawstrings, these are all real and they're coming from my actual pointe shoes. And the cut-offs I saved from the photo shoot. I was really inspired by these ribbons here to do the next piece, and I did like a ribbon drawing of the tonal pointe shoe. You can see next to it. Okay, so for the next page, I started off by actually studying Irish. So I have these study cards that uses colours to hide certain highlighted words. So my idea basically was to paint my toes onto these red points and then use the red card over it, so then the red will disappear and you're left with only the toes. So here is what it looks like with the red card over it. You can still see a bit of the red, but I think it still looks really cool, and again it shows what actually goes on inside my shoes. I have a PDF with the finished pieces, so there I uploaded a picture of me actually wearing these shoes and it looks like I'm on my toes. And then I went back a bit to my hot glue piece and I was observing this tester that I did, and I noticed the shadows underneath. What really intrigued me was the double shadows. I was really interested in them and the way they layered and created deeper tones with each other. And I looked around in my room to see if I could find any more cool shadows, and I found these plants. I wondered if I could create a third shadow, and I used another light to do this. I also have these dried roses on my wall, so I traced them and coloured them. I used red and blue so that the overlapping layer would be purple, and then I did another one with just one single colour, pink. From the roses, I moved on to the shadows on my hands, and I used a third light again to capture a third shadow. I coloured in on top of the printouts with colouring pencil and then Posca down below. Then I did an acrylic painting of my favourite pose of the hand. And then on the next page I continued to look at hands, but in like a different angles and different colours. And for this colourful piece over here I melted Crayola with a hot glue gun and placed it on top, and the hand there is my inspiration. And then I was looking at pointillism and different ways of shading the hands, and I had really fun with that as well. And then over here, nice and simple, I did some photography, and the interesting thing about this is it's not edited at all, and the reason is because my windows are double layered, so when you shine a light this happens. And then I did some observational drawings, one in acrylic and one tonal sketch. And then for this page I did an oil pastel piece. I really experimented with colour over here, and it's out of my comfort zone, so I was really happy when I completed this. This sheet is so that it doesn't transfer onto the next page. And then over here I was experimenting with squid ink, and first I did ink first, and then I sprayed on top of it with water, and the next one I did the opposite and I sprayed with water first, and then I did ink droplets afterwards. And then last one, my favourite, was I did a blind water drawing, and then I dropped ink droplets on top of it to give this kind of effect. And then next I did just like a normal ink drawing, and then I layered tissue paper on top of it so that the ink would spread and give this kind of cool effect. The layout that I formatted it kind of reminded me of pixels, so I cut up a printed out piece and I stuck it down. Here I was doing acetate, and I did a little drawing of myself there, and then behind that I did another ink drawing of my point shoes. I thought it would be best fitting here because I was doing a lot of experimenting with ink. And then on the next page I was focusing more of the bodily movement, so capturing the movement of the body. So then I did a little comic strip of a pirouette, which is basically a turn, and I was focusing on the movement of the skirt, not the shoes. And I was looking at monoprints as well, and I really liked the dress, so I did a little replica of that as well. Next I did a tonal of the same dress, and I did an etching of it on top of it, and it's hard to see, so I'm going to shine a light on it so the shadow appears. And I really liked the way the shadows showed up when you put a light on it. And then next I was looking at my favourite poses and how I included that with some metalwork, because I have a candle which spins if you blow on it, so I added these little figurines made out of cans onto it, and that's on my final piece presentation. Next I was looking at artist research, and Degas does a lot of ballerinas, so I did my own version of a Degas piece. I was looking at his unconventional backgrounds and his use of colour, and I also looked at Andrew Kadama, which is one of my favourite artists, and I was looking at emotion and how he uses only one colour. And then these are my photographs, and these ones are not edited, these are. And yeah, here's just a little flick through of my edited pictures. And then finally we move on to my final piece for this project. So again, I was using the double layers for my final piece, but I added these 3D butterflies to it, and I really wanted to convey emotion in this piece. So these butterflies are the butterflies that you get in your stomach, but then when you go on stage these emotions come out, and I wanted to express how these butterflies can reach someone and how emotion can reach someone. And I like the way when you shine a torch it looks like it's moving. So this here is just another piece that I did, and I just want to say thank you for giving me the time, and I hope you consider my portfolio. Thank you so much.